Segment 2, Gold and Black Live. We've gotten a lot better. No, I shouldn't say that because Stacy's great looking. In fact, if she caught me saying that, I'd be in a lot of trouble. But Ralph Taylor joins us. You guys all know Ralph from the Purdue radio broadcast, but also a living legend. Anybody that's part of a team that goes to the national championship game is a living legend. And we have George Faerber on the line as well. George, are you there?
I am, Alan. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing well, and we got Ralph in the studio as well. We're going to start telling lies and all kinds of great stories about how you guys were invincible. But back in the day, and we won't say how many years ago, you guys were pretty invincible. What an unbelievable season, that 1968-69 season. And I wanted to just ask you first, George, about, put that in perspective. What has that meant over time to you to be a part of a team that went so deep in the tournament and really captured the imagination of Purdue fans from 1969 all the way to 2014?
Well, it was, I guess maybe to set the stage, Alan, is a different time. Obviously, at that time, freshmen weren't eligible, and so you didn't have freshmen playing with the varsity. They played a freshman schedule. I happened to be a sophomore that year, so that was the first year I could play with the varsity team. You only had one team out of the Big Ten that went to the NCAA tournament, and you couldn't dunk, and there wasn't the three-pointer. So
different game.
So it was a completely different game than it is today. And lots of, at that time, particularly in the Big Ten, lots of 100-point games. It was a real run and shoot 'em up. To go with that, we obviously had one of the most prolific scorers in the history of the game, in Rick Mount. And we were fortunate that we were able to win the Big Ten and proceed through, winning up at Marquette in the regional and get to the final game. Interesting that year also, we opened the season with UCLA at Pauley Pavilion in our first game of the season, and we closed the season with UCLA in the last championship game at Louisville, Kentucky.
Ralph, everybody now, when you look at the kids today, and you're around them obviously with the Purdue men's basketball program and have been for years, they all think every year they're going to the Final Four. Back in that day, it was big to win the Big Ten championship, but did you think, did you guys as a senior on that team write those down as goals? Or, how do you recall in terms of what did you set for goals for that team in '69 as you look back?
Well, I guess I don't really think we set any goals other than just to play as hard as we can and see what would happen. And I think once we got on a roll, especially in the Big Ten season when we finished 13-1, we kind of realized what was ahead of us. And I think we're all excited about the prospect of going to the NCAA tournament.
George, you look back and the ability to play in the NCAA tournament, you play game one and you're in the Sweet 16. Obviously, there's, 21 teams in the tournament at the time. But one of the things I think is amazing, and I think I was a third grader that year, but watching that team, just the response, the love affair I think the Purdue fans had for that team. The arena was new. Ralph Taylor was one of the first of the all-time great crowd favorites. But it was really had to be a magical time to be a basketball player because you guys were rock stars before there were rock stars in athletics, it seemed, at that time.
Well, I think Alan, I think there were a lot of pieces coming together. The year before, Mackey Arena had just been dedicated, and UCLA was at the dedication game and ended up winning on a last-second shot. That was the year I was a freshman, and so you got a brand-new arena, which always brings excitement to a program, and then you got a run-and-shoot-'em-up team that can put lots of points on the board, kind of like in football when you can throw that thing around and get in the end zone a lot. Fans really like that, and we were definitely up tempo in the game, and so just a lot of pieces that went together on it, and we had a lot of great chemistry on that team of people that fit slots. There would have been three guys that played pro ball off of that team and played in the pros and started in the ABA, and Herm Gilliam. Herm played in the NBA and had a great career. And so we had a lot of really interesting pieces. Ralph and I were kind of the garbage men around the basket trying to rebound the ball, and Keller or Gilliam would shoot it. And there was good roles on that team. It was very well defined.
You know, and Ralph, George King gets credited. Bob King used to always credit George for somehow getting this team. I mean, you had Herm Gilliam and Billy Keller the year before Rick. There when you guys were sophomores, you know, be co-MVPs of a basketball team. Rick Mount comes in, the dynamics change. But talk about maybe what you learned about how putting, as George said, putting those pieces together and make them work. It was truly a work of art to get everything to mesh the way it needed to.
Well, and George said it was a matter of putting the pieces together. I think that was key, and also the fact that we had two individuals, most importantly, Billy Keller and Herm Gilliam, who, you know, after some serious conversations with Coach George and Coach Bob, that, you know, if you sacrifice a little bit, we can do great things. And for them to sacrifice, because they could have easily, each of them could have easily scored 20 points apiece. I think their sacrifice, as well as the fact that all of us, for the most part, liked each other and got along with each other, and we did things together as a group, I think it spoke volumes about, as George pointed out, the pieces coming together, but also the fact that we liked each other, hung out with each other off the court as well as on the court.
Now we get to the storytelling portion of the show, because I've heard some great stories. Most of them you can even tell on the internet, so we'll do that. But I do think I remember hearing stories about you guys did bond as a team. I've even heard Rick Mount talk about you had you had really three big trips, or two big trips. You went to L.A. to play UCLA to open the season. Then you went out west to Hawaii,
well,
but you also
Sun Devil Classic.
Sun Devil Classic.
Tempe,
But you guys
Arizona.
had fun. Anyone want to tell a story about you guys in LA before the UCLA game? It sounds like you guys had some fun. You got out and bonded as a team.
George is a great storyteller, so George, you should lead.
I don't want to ruin any of the existing reputations.
Okay.
It's too late now. Statute of limitations is out. George.
I will tell you that one of the things with Ralph that I was introduced, not to Ralph personally, but to Ralph's tennis shoes. I will never forget the first time, because he was ahead of me in school, and the very first time I went to practice, and we were freshmen, and I'll never forget watching Ralph's bottom of his tennis shoes come flying past my head. I don't think there's anybody probably been in the game could jump higher than Ralph could, and that was my introduction to Ralph Taylor.
Yeah, and I won't tell, because I don't know the whole story. Just a little something about having some fun and being in LA for the first time. But in all seriousness, about being as a team and that long road trip out to Hawaii. And I'll throw it out to Ralph first. You go to Arizona and you lose. I think you lost the championship game to Arizona State, but then you go out to Hawaii, and it's just a lot of time together. This team bonded in some way. Do you remember any turning points where you knew, hey, this could be a really special group?
I think the turning point before we got to Hawaii was really in Los Angeles, where, and George can't correct me, but I think one of George's friends happened to be in Los Angeles when we went to Los Angeles to play UCLA, and he had a station wagon on it must have been a 9-passenger station wagon, but 12 of us fit into the 9-passenger station wagon, and we all decided that we were going to go to the Sunset Strip.
Yeah.
And we all go to Sunset Strip, and Rick ordered probably water or a diet drink. So, and we had a curfew.
Yeah.
So we had fun on Sunset Strip, and we went to the Playboy Club. I think, didn't we go to the Playboy Club, George?
You went, I didn't.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so we all go to Sunset Strip. So we come back, get back to the hotel. Well, Coach Bob's already made room check, so we're piling out of the station wagon. Coach Bob approaches us and let us know that we had violated the curfew, but we knew since Rick was with us, nothing would happen to anybody. And of course, Coach Bob never told Coach George what we had done, and I think that was just the beginning of how close we were. And then when we go to Hawaii, we get to Hawaii and we arrive and we're hanging out to George, about 2 o'clock that morning, at 3 o'clock, because there was like a 3 or 4 hour time difference.
Yep, I remember that, Ralph. That was a lot of fun, and nice to be, that time of the year being 75-degree weather.
Exactly.
I think we'd all take 75-degree weather here. It's 50 out here today, and it feels like it's 80. George, you had an interesting role because obviously didn't start the season as a starter, but worked your way into the lineup. a terrific rebounder and a guy around the basket. But as a sophomore, with a lot of guys, a lot of upperclassmen that were really accomplished on this basketball team, and talk about how, what did you learn by working your way into the lineup and playing such a big role in this basketball team?
Well, I was Alan. I was the original white men can't jump type guy. So I figured out real early that I needed to make sure if I was going to play, I needed to be around the basket, rebounding, playing defense, and trying to hand the ball to Rick whenever I could get the ball to him. And so that was kind of my role. I'll never forget my first game at Pauley Pavilion when like you said, I didn't start. I came off the bench, and in my first game, the front line was Kareem, Curtis Rowe, and Sidney Wicks, and that was their front line. And so that was a pretty good introduction into what college basketball is all about. And it just worked out over time that I was able to, was fortunate to be able to get in there. And I think too, sometimes who starts and who finishes is always important, and so we had a lot of people contribute. There were people coming off the bench that could do things better than what even some of the people that were on the floor as starters. They had unique abilities, and it really, one of the things that really hurt us at the end was Herman got hurt and he wasn't up to speed. Chuck Bavis was not up to speed. Our center, 7-foot center, and Rick had a little bit of a foot problem. So it's not an excuse. We weren't full steam going down to the wire in that championship game.
You look back and the opportunity, and Ralph, it was interesting to see because I know the Miami Ohio game, your senior year, coming off the bench, guys contributed, found ways to get things done. Larry Weatherford certainly was a guy that, as a sophomore, very, very talented guy that came in and did some big things. George, we and I, over the years, I always enjoy hearing your story of on the court, Marquette, the great steal, and I know you knew you had him all the time, but in the last minute, I believe, of regulation, Purdue was pretty much dead in the water in that game in a lot of ways. I mean, there was a deep Marquette with Coach Al McGuire had slowed the game down, made it tough for Purdue. Purdue was battling injuries, but you come up with a big steal and a big basket. Take us back through that experience and what it was like to get that done up at the University of Wisconsin Fieldhouse.
Well, they had about a 6'2", 6'3" forward by the name of George Thompson, and he was an excellent player. I think prior to that steal you're talking about, he'd scored 27 or 28 points on me. He was a great player, and but he was. I know a couple of times he kind of left when he did a reverse dribble. He kind of left the ball hanging, and so he got the ball, and I was guarding him, and he came down to midcourt and went to spin and hung the ball out behind him a little bit, and I was able to reach around and get it and throw it to Larry Weatherford, my classmate, who was a sophomore as well at the time, and he got fouled, and we were able. They missed a free throw coming back the other direction, and kind of set it up for an overtime with where Rick hit his patented shot going to the corner and won it for us in overtime.
Yeah, we're actually Ralph and I are looking at pictures of that. I'll ask both of you your recollections of the timeout when George King decided to run that play, and then what you were thinking when that ball. And I'll start with you, Ralph. When Rick's shot went in, Jerry Johnson's screen. We're looking at the picture there, but what that experience was like to know you're going to the Final Four. What do you remember about that moment in time, though?
I think it was one of the great clutch shots I've seen during my time here playing at Purdue, and then also thought about, this is now 4 years later from having gone to the Indiana High School State Championship basketball game, and now I get the great experience of going to the NCAA Final Four, and I just thought, man, it can't get any better than this.
And George, you were on the court at the time, I believe, but up by the picture goes, I think you're up by the by the key. Rick did not have a good shooting day that day, and Marquette again kind of controlled tempo in some ways. But did you have any doubt that thing was going in when it was launched?
You know, I really that shot, when he got that shot going to the corner and he was in rhythm, which he was on that play. Jerry set a nice pick for him, and Rick kind of hesitated. He started to come off the screen, and then he backed up, and the defensive guy didn't jump out, and he continued on 2 or 3 steps towards the corner, and I was on the other side of the basket, and I watched the trajectory, and when it left his hands, I knew it was going in.
Yeah. You had that tendency when watching Rick play where that would happen. He did that. He did that to the tune of 2,323 points, I think it was. George, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It's always a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you in Mackey Arena, hopefully, and give my best to Pam as well. So we enjoyed always speaking with you, and we're going to take a couple-minute break here, and I think Billy Keller is supposed to join us. If not, Ralph and I we'll chat on some memories. But George, have a good rest of the day, and thanks again for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Alan. Ralph, good talking with you.
Nice having you, George. Tell Pam I said hi. And are you guys coming up Sunday for the final home game?
No, we're not going to make it Sunday. We got a grandkid thing going on.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you up here again soon. Okay, Chris, we're going to take a couple-minute break, and hopefully Billy Keller will be calling us in shortly off the golf course of all places. But we'll look forward to chatting with him as well. So stay put for a couple minutes. We'll be back on Gold and Black Live.